Hello, I am Scott, and behind the camera is Devin, and we're going to do a little experiment. We want to create a couple videos, or maybe several videos, talking about football helmet face masks. So, welcome to Maestro Masks. Here we go. We are going to be talking about everything from coatings to dun guards. You got to talk about dun guards. If you're going to talk about football helmet face masks, you have to talk about dun guards. But dun guards and how they relate with axioms and how those two kind of are related. I'll talk about it. We're going to talk about clear shells, and I'll explain more. This is a clear shell. I'll explain more what clear shells are. We're going to talk about the evolution of face mask clip placement, the clips, the little pieces of plastic that mount the face mask to the helmet. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk just about whatever it is that you guys can come up with as far as questions that you have as well. So I wanted to get into today's conversation, today's video, talking about the evolution of the football helmet face mask, and especially about the advent of what was called back then the high double wire face mask. And so I've got two examples of the first generation of the high double wire face mask sitting in front of me on my Giants helmet. This is the first generation, and this would then be the one that came along afterwards. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to address, first of all, kind of the advent of the face mask itself. Now, we're not talking about the leather ones and how you tied them on and all that. We're talking about pretty much from the 60s on up and through the 70s now, and how the face mask evolved, especially Schutt's version of the face mask, or at that point was called Kramer, their version of the face mask. And they pretty much offered four different varieties. You had the, I got them down here, you had the NOPO, which is just a basic kind of a square Franco Harris, Rocky Bleier would have worn this style of mask. You had the OPO, so here we've got it on my Oilers helmet, like a Dan Pastorini sort of thing. Bradshaw wore this, but he wore the green dot version. But this is just a basic idea. Then you had the JOP, so another Oilers helmet, so the basic JOP. And then finally, you had the NJOP, so here's my Lions Husky helmet, but you've got the NJOP, so this is more of like a lineman style face mask. Those were the four varieties, and whether you're talking square jaw, the more rounded 60s versions, but that was pretty much it. Those four varieties. Well, in 1968, a Giants player by the name of Randy Menear was the first one to bring up kind of this 80s version, and I found this recently. Look at this thing, how raggedy this thing is. But Randy Menear wore something that looks like this. And it has the old 70s style attachment on the side, but it looks like an 80s version NOPO. So this is the 80s version, but you'll notice how the side hookups are a little bit different. The clips are slightly slanted, but that's the general idea. So we've got now this change in the face mask, and Randy Menear's was the first where it was like, hey, that's different. You got the double wire across the front, and definitely unique and something that we had never seen before, and that was in 1968. Well, now we fast forward. So we take Menear's experience and we fast forward 4 years. Once again, going back to the OPO style, Spider Lockhart comes along and is like, hey, I need a little bit more protection on my mask. And so Schutt came up, or the Giants came up with what is called the Giant Special. And essentially what all they did was they took the OPO and they added a T-bar to it. But this is the first OPO-DW that comes along. And Spider Lockhart wore this, Brad Van Pelt wore it, and Van Pelt wore all of the Giant specials. He wore so many face masks, it isn't funny. We'll probably bring him up many, many, many more times. But the first time was with the Giant special. And this is, once again, we first saw this in about 72, 73. Well then, progression moves along, and Bike comes out with a bigger helmet, and so we need then a bigger sized face mask. And around 76, somewhere around there, is when the green dot face mask comes into existence. So now you have two different sizes, and we'll talk about red dot and green dot, but I want to talk about this green dot version of the Giant special. Essentially the same thing. They took the forward rake OPO, and then they cut off the triangles. Here, let me go get one. I'll show you what I'm talking about. On my Houston helmet, we've got that. Let's get this guy out of here. So the forward rake, this is 76, 77. This mask, notice how it kind of jets forward a little bit. Well, they also had the little reinforcement triangles in the corner. That's one of the ways that you could look at a mask and be like, okay, yeah, that's a green dot mask, was because of the little triangles that they put in the corner. Let's put that right there. Well, for the Giant special, they got rid of the little triangles, and then they put the T-bar on it once again, and that's the Giant special, the green dot version of the Giant special. Running back Larry Zonka was probably the most notable of players to wear the Giant special. You're like, wait a minute, Scott. He wore a Dungard configuration. He wore the BNO2 nose bar. Yes, when he played for Miami, he wore the Dungard with the BNO2. But when he went to the Giants, he wore the Dungard. He stuck with his configuration of the Dungard with then a Dungard U-bar for a little bit. And then he made the switch then to the Giant special, and he finished off his career wearing the Giant special face mask. And so that is really kind of the beginning of Schutt branching out and creating this more varied, more wide variety of a face mask line. But by and large, these were, like I said, Giant specials. So the New York Giants wore them. A couple other guys wore these masks. Preston Pearson for the Cowboys wore a green dot version of the Giant special. But there weren't very many. These masks didn't get out there in large quantities. So that's kind of the breakdown. But what's interesting about this is now you look today, you look at a Speedflex, probably the most common mask, the SF2BD, is nothing more than the evolved, maybe the SF2BDC, but they're nothing more than the evolved versions of the early 70s Giant specials. So that's our conversation for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If I've conjured up any questions or any issues, I would love to hear from you. My email is maestromasks@gmail.com. I'll have Devin put that on the bottom of the screen. Hopefully we can get that for you. But maestromasks@gmail.com. Notice there's no spaces, no underscores, no Maestro Masks 1 or anything like that. I fear that some people will try and falsify my email address and do nefarious things. It's maestromasks@gmail.com. That's the email address. If there's ever a change to that email address, I will make it known. But for now, it is maestromasks@gmail.com. Please, please, please email me any questions, any comments, any issues that you have. I would love to address them, and maybe we'll create another video on the questions that you brought up. But for now, this is our first video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Please come back.